I was thinking about atheism and how hopeless atheism against certain theologies. Because how you can oppose to something you don't have faith in that you think is not real. That's what we have problem now in the West with Islamic expansion. Because the West become incredibly secular, and as the result we become incredibly comfortable since secularism provided us with a scientific revolution, and now we become incredibly comfortable and well off. But the problem with the comfort, we refuse to acknowledge the reality of life. Islam has different idea of existence that absolutely contradict the Western society. And atheism, they're not going to defend the West against Islam because they don't believe in Islam. They don't believe in any religion, but seems like they got used to attacking Christianity because when you attack Christianity in the West, you're safe, since Christianity is not going to strike back, unlike Islam, which is much more aggressive in defense of itself. There was great atheists like Christopher Hitchens or Sam Harris or Daniel Dennett or Richard Dawkins who oppose Islam incredibly loud and aggressively. Also, modern people like Douglas Murray or God Saad, they still try to propagate their ideas and try to explain people why Islam is incompatible with Christian West. But the problem with the West is becoming less and less Christian. A lot of people think that religion is irrelevant, but it's not, because people has to have faith in something. We have to believe in something, and it doesn't matter if it's faith in God or faith in ideology. We have to have this faith. It's within us. Today I watched a podcast, and on this podcast there was one of the AI scientists, and he said somehow gleefully that the West almost rid of any theology. And I was thinking about it because it's kind of made me concerned. He was an intelligent man, but somehow he has this blind spot toward religion, towards significance of religion. It's really good that some people being raised in the West who never encountered the human atrocities that some people still experience outside of the West. And therefore, if you grew up having sheltered life, you see the world differently. You think the world filled with reason, and you can reason with people, you can explain people intelligently why religion is bad and why secularism is good and education is very important. But the problem is we're not reasonable creatures. Even artificial intelligence that human created becoming less and less reasonable because it become more and more intelligent. Because more intelligence doesn't mean more reasoning. It also means less reasoning. It means more emotions, more feelings, more understanding, and sometimes you get obsession with some ideas over than other ideas. And it doesn't mean that your obsession is right. It can be bad, but you can help but to keep obsessing with those ideas. And one thing that bothers me a lot, this unity between the progressive left and Islam. And I was thinking about why the progressive left in cahoots with Islam. And then I realized that in some sense the progressive left and Islam have the same idea for the West. First of all, they united against common enemy, the West itself, because they claim the West is oppressive, colonizers that must be dismantled. And also the progressive left and Islam, they don't believe in human rights. They don't believe in individualism. They have absolutely different metric by which people should exist. And what I think they see they would unite destroy the West the way the West is now, and then they will sort out between each other. That's a big problem, and it's really strange to observe. And I was thinking about our consciousness. The more I learn about consciousness, the more I think that consciousness itself exists outside of human biology. And consciousness itself is intelligent. And what happened is consciousness uses our brain as a means by which it observes itself, the world, through the shape it accumulates while being inside of the body and outside of the body at the same time. For example, I have a brain and it linked to consciousness. And this consciousness provides me with intelligence. And my brain compute this intelligence, make some sense out of this intelligence by being aware of this intelligence, be aware of the world and be aware of myself. Because consciousness itself cannot be aware of itself without any form. It needs form, it needs limitations. Because you cannot read a book that have no end and that, for example, has infinite amount of pages. There's no way for you to understand this book if it has infinite amount of pages. The same, for example, with the movie. If this movie infinite hours long, there's no way for you to finish it because you don't have infinite amount of time to be self-aware. Self-awareness itself, I think, hidden in our limitation, in our biological limitation, because consciousness, for example, might be something infinite, but it needs shape, it needs form, it needs something that it can trap itself inside and use my biological hardware to become aware of itself and of the world. Because what I learn about myself and about my existence, that when I become much more older, I become more mind than the body, because I found pleasures in different ways. For example, I find a lot of pleasures in learning new things, in understanding new things, in arguing with myself and with other people to find the truth about myself and about life, because you cannot find the truth about life without finding truth about myself. Why I'm saying about this, because religion, like Christianity, provide me with this frame. It helps me to put myself inside such a frame that would help me to control my biology. And the more biology I'm able to control about myself, the more I can understand the world through my mind, through my consciousness, that gives me enough intelligence for this understanding. Because if I become atheist, and then I might spread myself too wide, for example, because I won't have a frame. A lot of people don't understand. We have morals from our Christian framework. All our Western ideas was built on Christian frameworks. We need this frame to restrict voluntarily ourselves. That's another difference between Islam and Christianity. Islam restricts you involuntarily, because you have to be restricted in the solid frame of Islam that is everywhere. For example, in Islamic states, it's in politics, in culture, in every single thing. You're not free when you're restrained by Islam. In some sense, you live like in prison, because you have to be subjugated to this religion doctrine. Christianity is quite different, because Christianity gives you freedom. You don't have to practice to be Christian, but you should, because it gives you more opportunities to become aware of the benefits from practicing Christian ideas. And that's what I mean, because Christianity gives you freedom, and once you understand this freedom, you understand that freedom is in restraint. And when you're inside this moral Christian framework, you learn how to control your body, you learn how to control your biology, and once you learn this, you start practicing daily to control your biology and to your body. And this way, you have more time to exploring the world and yourself on a conscious level, to understand the world. That's maybe why secular progress happen in the West because Christianity let it happen. But the problem with the secularism that it's become too obsessed with itself. It started rejecting in the end Christianity, and suddenly people in the West, they assume we don't need Christianity any longer. We can live without this moral frame because people are educated enough to live this way. But the problem is we have a lot of immigrants from many other parts of the world, and for example, they bring their own frame. And since people in America or in the West do not demand from those people to adjust to their frame since they deny this frame in the first place, the immigrants who come from other countries, they just build their own frames that they brought from their countries. And that's what we have conflicts, because a lot of Westerners don't know how to behave. They try to adapt their own countries to the immigrants, to their moral framework that in contradictions to the Western framework. That's the problem, because people, you have to be born in the West or be raised in Christian tradition to understand that even sometimes you even don't need frame itself because you have this frame within yourself. But a lot of people from other countries, from other places, they need this idea to teach them. Otherwise, they will implement their own frame, and that's what we see right now. That's why Islam become so almost aggressive in establishing their own rules, their own ideas, their own ideological framework, and that's why it goes to politics and try to overtake the Western values and change them based on their Islamic doctrine. And the West have no immune system against this because the West is incredibly secular. And the problem with the secular idea of life is if you don't have no frame, it means you can do whatever you want. What exactly you should stop? Because people rely on common sense, they rely on education, they rely on reasoning, but we not exactly are reasonable creatures. We're not exactly, even education can give you this horrible obsession like intellect obsessed with itself, and you can start worshipping intellect. Then you start worshipping your body. That's what happened in secular societies. We began worshipping our bodies and worshipping our intelligence, and all our morality become irrelevant because we try to normalize promiscuous lifestyle. We try to destroy family values. We try to destroy religious ideas that actually help us to develop morals by which we live with each other in peace and prosperity. Without those moral ideas, we stop discriminating what is good and what is bad. And that's why we have ideology right now, for example, progressive left ideology, that they try to redefine literally every single thing, because they try to redefine promiscuity. They try to redefine what is good and what is bad. They try to redefine a lot of other things. They're playing with those things like it's a game, and it's not a game because society is slowly crumbling as the result. And that's what I like Christian traditions, because you have this frame where you can practice to restrain properly your biology. Otherwise, if your biology unrestrained, this comfort that we have right now, this prosperity that we have right now, becomes your prison, becomes your hell, where you become out of physical and mental shape, becomes incredibly weak, and you're unable to protect the West itself. And when a lot of people from other countries try to implement their own moral framework that in contradiction with the Western values, that even opposing to Western values, that even have certain desires to subjugate the Western values, a lot of Westerners won't do a thing because they like neutered house cats against foreign tigers. Because what exactly a neutered fat house cat would do to protect itself if suddenly in his apartment or house walk a huge foreign tiger? Nothing, because cat is still a cat. Even it has some certain commonalities with a tiger, but it's too comfortable, too fat, and not aggressive at all, because sometimes we have to protect ourselves, and the West need this protection, because we can reason our way out of anything, but we cannot reason our way from aggression of other people. Only one thing can unite us is our common value. And since we live in the West, we have to take immigrants and help them to assimilate to our framework. But for this, we have to maintain this framework. We have to practice our religious ideas, because without them, nothing makes sense. Because if secular world keep propagating itself across the West, what happens is a lot of people from different cultures, from different religion, start voting for their own laws. And atheism wouldn't stop them, because that's what democracy is. If you have majority people who practice Islam, they will create Sharia law in certain places in the West. And that's the big problem, because the West is a Christian nation, and it should stay Christian nation, because Christianity in the first place created right ground for the West to emerge and to become so successful. If Christian would disappear completely and the West become absolutely secular, it's not going to last long, because eventually it would turn into the nation of Islam. And that's what is going to happen. It's just common sense to understand, but unfortunately a lot of people refuse to understand it, and they refuse to say anything about it because they're terrified to be called racist and Islamophobe. And though it's make no sense, because you have to defend what you value. And if you're even secular person, if you're atheist, you still should understand that only Christianity can provide you with protection inside of the Christian frame. Islam won't provide you with this protection, because you can check all 56 Islamic states, and there's none of them has protection for Christians nor for secularists, because it's just impossible. It's incompatible. That's why even if you're atheist, you should learn to respect Christian tradition, and you should keep maintaining as much as you can Christian moral values.